Hello, my friends. Today is day 361, and we are reading Second John and Third John. And I'm thankful that we have this opportunity to recap today's reading. But before we get started, if you have not yet accepted a challenge, we're going into a new year. We're just a few days away, and I want to encourage you to go to www.selflesschurch.org. On the home screen there, you will find a link that will allow you to register and be a part of a group of people who will read the Bible in the upcoming year. And we're going to do a lot of things to gather together to keep you up to date with the latest resources and things that you need to know to remain encouraged as you finish out the year. I just want to encourage you as we're going through the last few days. You have a day like today where we can catch up if you're behind, and you can make it across that finish line. So please, by all means, jump in and make sure you finish strong. So today we are reading two of John's personal letters written to two different individuals. One was written to a lady and her family, and the other was written to Gaius, who is a friend of John. And as I was reading today's letters, or the reading, it struck me how personal these letters are, right? And then how the Spirit is able to use these personal letters to reveal truth to us and to encourage us in this generation, in this time, concerning things that we go through. And it just lets us know, first off, how the Spirit works. Secondly, how involved the Spirit is in every person's life, particularly in these individuals' lives, as they were used to reveal the truth and the faith and the testimony of Jesus Christ. So I just thought that was very interesting. I think about these individuals. I don't know that they would have imagined. I think in some instances they were aware that they were doing things that would affect people for generations to come. But I think we don't want to minimize the fact that these are very real life, everyday situations that God is uniquely involved in. And my prayer for us is that whenever we think about the things we are dealing with in our lives, the things that we encounter, the things we face, I pray that we don't just see it as a, just an everyday thing. I hope we can understand and maybe even grasp that perhaps God is involved in a way that we could not really imagine, and that He is doing something with the very simple things of life that will yield eternal dividends. And I think that's what we are reading in these two very short but very compelling letters. Now, the thing that seems to be most dominant in John's second letter is the importance of truth, right? And one of the things he says to the lady, he says in verse 4, I was happy to meet some of your children and find them living according to the truth, just as the Father commanded. And that seems to allude to or relate to the fact that there may have been and could have been Christians who were believers, but they did not have the life to substantiate that faith. And he found great comfort in seeing them live up to the faith that they professed, right? And what that looks like is living in love, living as people who love. And it's just so interesting, that concept. John seems to be very, very focused on this concept, this motif, this paradigm of love that he's witnessed from Jesus Christ. In fact, we see in John chapter 3, verse 16, the Gospel of John, that, he talks about the love of God in a way that is abundantly sacrificial. It is giving. It is obviously something that he experienced in his life and that touched him in a way that he never thought possible. And it influenced everything that he did, everything he taught, everything he wrote, and obviously the way he lived. And so he's expressing the importance of love, encouraging the family to love one another, and obviously those who would read as secondhand recipients. He's encouraging us as well to love. But look at what he says in verse 6 in chapter of 2 John's epistle. He says, love means doing what God has commanded us, and he has commanded us to love one another just as you heard from the beginning. Now, the threat to that is the deceivers that have gone out, because he says in the following verses, I say this because many deceivers have gone out into the world and they deny that Jesus Christ came in a real body. Such a person is a deceiver and an antichrist. Watch out that you do not lose what we have worked so hard to achieve. Be diligent so that you receive your full reward. Okay, so the threat to this life is the deceiver, right? That comes and tries to oppose the fact, the testimony that Jesus did actually come into the world. And the reason that's so important is because if Jesus came into the world, then this doctrine, this truth, this way of life is one that is applicable to those who believe. And so in order to circumvent that the way, as they were referring to it, one must abolish and extinguish the fact that Jesus did actually come, right? And he, John, being a one who witnessed this, Jesus is coming literally in his earthly ministry. He has the responsibility to uphold that. Now, the third letter, who is written to Gaius, is one that focuses on faithfulness, okay, and encourages, but yet also appreciates and acknowledges the faithfulness. Gaius is obviously one we read about, or Gaius is one we read about in the book of Acts, and there were a number of times his name came up, and obviously there's some overlap. We understand that he was involved with the Apostle Paul, or was at least encountered the Apostle Paul on a few occasions. And we see him being referenced here in John's letters. So what would one need at this particular point in the church's history? Well, they definitely need encouragement. They need encouragement to continue in the work that they have committed to remain faithful, because the pressure is rising. And anytime a person sets their mind on doing the will of God, you can assure yourself there will be some sort of opposition, some sort of distraction, or at least an attempt towards that. And the challenge will always remain to stay focused, keep your head down, do the work, and not get caught up in all of the propaganda, right? And John, writing this letter, he encourages guys to do that. All right. Now, he says here, dear friend, don't let this bad example. He's talking about the people who are making accusations. He's speaking directly to the example, Diotrephes, who was a leader, refusing to work along with John, and he has done some things to kind of make John's efforts very, very difficult. And not only John's efforts, but anyone who would be traveling in the name of Christ to share and teach, he's made it difficult for them. But John rather, encourages Gaius to don't let that influence him, to keep doing what is good. Remember, those who do good are proving that they are God's children. That's a pretty weighty statement, right? And that those who do evil, they prove that they don't know God at all. Another weighty statement. And so he encourages him. And maybe the takeaway for today, at least for me, as I'm reading from this point of view, is, find a way to encourage some people. You never know what people are going through. You never know the hardships that they're enduring to do what God has called them to do. It goes a long way to reach out to someone and say, hey, man, or hey, sis, keep going. We believe in you. God has something prepared for you. And that's what John is doing here. Again, very personal letter, but it is one that is inspired and included in the Word of God. And here we have an opportunity to learn from it. So I would love to know what you've learned. Please leave your comments in the comment box below. Let me know what are some things that stood out to you. And let's take an opportunity to grow from today's reading. Keep going forward, maybe catch up, go ahead, go further. I don't know, but just make the best of it, because we have two more books left, the book of Jude, and then that very last book, the book of Revelation. And so we're going to have our hands full with that. So let's make the best of it. And I look to see you on the other side of the finish line. Until next time, thank you for watching. Take care. God bless. And remember, live by the word.